What's up, everyone? In today's video, I want to talk about how do we know it's time to switch careers? And it's a common question that's asked by everyone because you always wonder, hey, am I giving up on opportunities by staying where I'm at? Or is there something better out there? You get that grass is greener on the other side kind of mentality. And in today's video, I want to talk about the 4 things you really need to reflect upon before making that decision. So let's get started. The first thing that you got to be aware of is identifying the signs of dissatisfaction or burnout. And it could be a variety of things, right? Whenever you come home from work and you feel low on energy, feel like you had a sucky day, and if it's consistent on, across a span of time, like of course we're all going to have good days and bad days at work. That's just part and parcel of the human experience. However, but when the issue is if it consistently happens and you feel like this is not what I want to do, this is not heading in the right direction, then that's really time to really reevaluate, hey, is it just a short-term thing or is it a long-term thing? And one of the recommendations that I have to help really reflect and unpack this is journaling, right? When you journal over a span of time, right? And not just have it in one sitting, but rather like, hey, every week at the end of the week on a Friday, you end your week and you journal. Hey, how is this week going? Is this going in the right direction? Is this headed? Is this what I want to do in the long run, right? And is there really an exit to this? So that would be one way to really just track over time to see whether this is something, whether your career is really headed in the right direction. Looking for signs of dissatisfaction and burnout is essential. The second thing I would say is really important is evaluating whether the current job aligns with your long-term goals, right? So everyone's kind of been there at one point or another, taking on contracts, job hopping, and just trying to find your direction. And that's normal, right? Because you really do have to make ends meet, and that's just you just have to deal with that. However, if you feel like what you're at does not align with your long-term goals, that's another thing to really think about. And of course, like, no duh, John, you're speaking like common sense here. However, the question is, how do you really know what is your long-term goal? And for your long-term goal, that really comes down to clarity, self-reflection, and just self-awareness of where it is that you want to go for your career. And therefore, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how hard you run if you're running in the wrong direction. So getting that internal clarity of where you want to go, and then seeing where you're currently at and whether that maps with your long-term goals. And that could be a lot of things, right? In life, there's really no one size fits all. Some people prefer to amass a lot of wealth. Some other people like to prioritize work-life balance, family, or just traveling to see the world. And at each stage of your life, you're gonna prefer different things, right? I have videos about career problems in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and at every stage, it's going to be different. And therefore, that's why there's really no one size fits all. You really need to have that self-awareness to know where you want to go. And only then can you really make sense of your current steps. So I can give you an example. Right now, I am a user research manager in games, right? And, there's a lot of alignment in terms of what I like to do, such as I love video games, I love culture, I have a background in research, I love managing people, and I love people, right? I just generally like people. That's why I was in education, that's why I did coaching, and that's why I'm in games, right? So all these things align, and there's that clarity where that North Star of these things that I really like, such as people, such as teaching, such as coaching, and video games, right? These are all things that really align, and this really helps me understand that, hey, this is the place that I want to be. At the same time, is this the place I want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I don't know, right? And that's why you have to constantly reflect to see, hey, is this where I want to be? Am I satisfied where I'm at? Does this map with my long-term goals? And a lot of that comes down to self-awareness and just clarity in your career in terms of where you want to drive it. The third thing you want to evaluate when it comes to changing careers is to what extent are there opportunities for growth and advancement? And I want to be very specific here because there are jobs and then there are careers. They are not the same thing. You can have a job as a bartender, you can have a job as a research moderator, you can have a job as a content creator. You can have a job as a copywriter, right? These are all different jobs. But do all these jobs lead to a career? Like, are there logical next steps in the ladder as you progress? And sometimes it's not very clear, right? So in my field in user research, most people begin as assistants or moderators, which is you go into the gaming lab and you set things up. And when people come in to play test, you bring them in, you ask them questions, you make sure things run smoothly. And that's step one. Step number two is you become a research associate. And as a research associate, you start assisting the mid-levels and the seniors to execute their research and to really make sure that the research is done properly. At the next level, you're at mid-levels, you're leading projects now, you're heading conversations, you're doing cross-functional work. And as a senior, you are leading multiple projects, you're overseeing other mid-levels, you're overseeing associates, doing coaching for the mid-levels and associates to make sure that they're growing, right? And after that, you can proceed to be an IC, like a lead researcher, or you can proceed to be a manager, right? So these are all very logical rungs of the ladder, and that constitutes a career in games user research. However, there are jobs out there where essentially there is no option to progress. And sometimes that's just the nature of the beast. And therefore, you really need to evaluate and assess where you're at right now. Are there opportunities for advancement? And at the same time, you also need to evaluate, do I even want to advance, right? Not every promotion is a good one. So there are cases where there are people who are individual contributors, they get promoted to become managers, and as a result, they do a lot of meetings and meeting people and doing a lot of people stuff, and that's just not what they like to do. And so once again, that comes back to self-awareness and clarity in terms of what are your strengths and limitations, and that comes down to personality profiles. That comes down to your interests in terms of the things that you're dealing with, right? Is it concrete or is it abstract? Is it social or is it product oriented, right? These are all different things that you need to evaluate. And finally, the fourth thing would be to consider changes in personal interests or values. And that comes down to that point I mentioned earlier about being in your 20s, 30s, 40s. Um, just case in point, in my 20s, it was all about going out and seeing the world, trying new things. So I launched my career in Korea as an international school teacher, and I did that for a good 5 years. It was at that time where I started a family and I started having kids, right? And by the time I hit 30, I had 3 kids. So my priorities have changed. It's no longer about seeing the world, it's about providing that stability for them. But at the same time, I was pursuing grad school. So I had to juggle all of that. And now I'm in my 40s. It's like I need to have a nice and stable environment for my kids who are now essentially in high school and middle school. I need to have a stable environment to grow up in so that they can really build the foundations to have a good, stable life. Perhaps go to college, perhaps go to trade school. I don't know, right? It's their lives. But providing that stability becomes essential. And that's why at every stage in life, you got to evaluate what are my priorities, what are my values, what are my interests. And to be frank, that's the future in the world of work. With developments such as AI, automation, right, ChatGPT replacing a lot of jobs, and so on. That's why when it comes down to personal values and interests, these are all things that you just need to evaluate holistically. So those are 4 things that I recommend for just understanding and evaluating when it's time to move on and switch careers. Um, it's not all there is out there. If you have any other thoughts on this, please let me know in the comments below. And if you found this to be of value, I hope you give it a like and subscribe for more. All right, take care, everyone.